Hello everyone. In my earlier session, I have already discussed about what is definition of a company and what are kinds or types of companies. Now here we little go into details of what are kinds of companies, and we take up three companies as a part of discussion of our session today. There are many more kinds of companies, but when we read or interpret, in fact, we read would be an appropriate word. When we read a Companies Act, we come across three companies which are directly mentioned under Companies Act, while all other kinds of companies or types of companies need to be interpreted while reading Companies Act. What am I saying? Yes, Section 3 of Companies Act mentions three kinds of or types of companies in the Act itself, while all other kinds and types of companies can be interpreted through Section 7 of Companies Act. So, let us avoid talking about Section 7 of Companies Act and let us just focus on what Section 3 of Companies Act speak about or discuss or lets us know about. So Section 3 of Companies Act gives us three types of companies. The first one is public company, the second one is private company, and third one is one-person company. To deal up with these three, I would in fact start with the last one. One-person company. What do you mean by one-person company? Years back, or in fact before 2003, when I was teaching this subject, I might have made always a mention that a company cannot be formed by one single member or person. Why? Because till 2013, one person company wasn't a part of Companies Act. It is, or this concept is introduced by Companies Act 2013. So Amendment Act 2013 to Companies Act in fact introduced one-person company. And from the nomenclature, it is quite easy to understand what is this type of a company. This type of company means a company which can be formed by only one person. So, one-person company is a company which can be formed by one person. Let us go to what do we mean by public company. A public company is the one, as per Section 3 of Companies Act, the one which needs at least 7 members for the formation of this kind of or type of a company. So, 7 or more persons can form a public company. And what is the larger limit or maximum limit for being a members of this kind of a company? There is unlimited members. There is no limit, maximum limit, which is imposed by Companies Act for a public company. While talking about a private company, it is a company as per Section 3 of Companies Act which states 2 or more persons. A company formed by 2 or more persons is a private company. And what is the maximum limit? Maximum limit for private company is not more than 200 persons. So, to simple understanding of what are kinds of companies mentioned under Companies Act specifically are three types of companies. First is public company, which can be formed by 7 or limitless people. There is no maximum limit imposed. Second is private company, which needs at least 2 persons and maximum of 200 persons to form a private company. And third actually is a kind of private company only. So in fact, if you ask me what are kinds of companies, I would tell you there are two categories of companies. One is private and one is public. Underneath private, we have this one-person company, because one-person company is always a private company. This one-person company needs one person only. The minimum and the maximum limit for one-person company is 1. So remember this. This is the first criteria to understand what are types of companies which are mentioned under Companies Act. As per the members, we can classify companies into 3: 7 or more public, 2 or more private, or 2 to 100 private, and 1 is 1-person company. Let us go on to the next point to understand on what other criteria can we understand these concepts of these 3 types of companies. Another point of understanding what are kinds of companies, or companies can be categorized on a different criteria as well, and that is companies based on, or types of companies based on liabilities. On this point, we again have 3 kinds of companies. One is company limited by shares, another is company limited by guarantee, and third is unlimited company. So what do we mean by these? If you are considering company limited by shares, then company limited by shares is the one, the capital in such kind of companies is introduced in form of shares, and the capital of the company is divided into smaller shares. And then these shares are considered, these shares actually are acquired by the shareholders, and these shares are considered as interests of those shareholders in the company. So the number of equity shares held by the shareholders measures the ownership of those shareholders in the company. So this kind of company is called as company limited by shares. So when we talk about 1-person, see this criteria, or this criteria identified to classify the company considers all the 3 companies. I mean, a limited company by shares can be a private company, public company, or 1-person company also. So this form of company basically registered as 1-person company limited to its shares. Private limited company limited by its shares, as well as public limited company limited by its shares. So the word limited in private, 1-person, as well as public by shares is one of the criteria to classify the company. So by members we have classified the company, and now we are discussing by liability. So this is limited liability, which is considered through shares, that is company limited by shares. Second kind of or type of a company, if we consider liability as one of the criteria to identify or classify the companies, we have second type of company, company limited by guarantee. So here also a company can be a private or company can be a public, where the capital is not divided by its shares, or not divided into shares. In fact, the capital to be introduced by the members is in the nature of guarantee. So that is how, so subscribers of the memorandum, they subscribe the amount which is guaranteed by them. So shareholders, they shall be basically holding the share as per the guarantee which is provided by them or consented by them. So that is amount guaranteed which holds the interests of the shareholder in the company. So again, a company which is limited by guarantee can be public or can be a private company. So the percentage of ownership is not based on to the shares. It is based on to the amount which is guaranteed by the shareholder. So this is called as company limited by guarantee. Third category or third type of company based on to liabilities is unlimited company. The company which is not limited by any liability. In case of any debts arises in a particular company, then the members doesn't have the limits, or they doesn't have limit to their part in the company. Rather it extends, in fact such kind of company, they extends to the personal assets of the shareholders as well. In other kinds of companies, when there are limited companies, personal assets of the shareholders usually doesn't come into the scenario. because they are limited to the shares, unpaid shares or paid shares in fact. When it comes to guarantees, we more talk about unpaid shares. So, limited companies always are advisory. So, it is advised that you should in fact have limited companies. But yes, third kind of a company is unlimited company, wherein there is no limited liability of the members. So, it actually liability of every member can go to the extent of their personal assets as well. Hence, most popular and most advisable kind of a company is limited company. So, this is the second criteria on which we make a company categorized into parts. So, first criteria was as per members, public private 1%. Second criteria is as per the limitations or liability. That is, first one is limited liability as per the share, limited liability as per the guarantee, and third one is unlimited shares. So, unlimited company rather. So, that is how we categorize three kinds of companies on second consideration. Let us go on to the third consideration on which we can more or furthermore categorize the companies. The next consideration, in fact, I would say is something which we won't take it as miscellaneous, but these are other types of companies where we interpret or we find these companies while we interpret company law or Companies Act. So, time and again, while we further ourselves through the readings of Companies Act, we come across such kind of companies, or practically also we come across such kind of companies. I can give you one example. Other kinds of companies, the first example, or rather the first kind of company I would say is Royal Chartered Company. I can give an example of this, simple to understand, or in fact you won't need any discussions and explanation for this. East India Company was a Royal Chartered Company. So there was a charter, royal charter, through which these companies used to come into existence. We now under Indian Companies Act don't have such kind of companies, but there is another criteria or there is another type of a company which can be onto the similar footing but not a royal chartered company, which we categorize as statutory companies. So there are special enactments made by the parliament or special acts made by the past by the parliament to make such kind of companies come into existence. Not to need any more explanations to be given by me if I give you example of this. Reserve Bank of India is one of the examples when I take this type of a company. So, there is a special act, Reserve Bank of India Act is the enactment passed by the parliament to make such associations come into existence. So, these are special parliamentary enactments which make such companies come into existence and function for whatever they have been formed or established for. Third kind of a company is foreign company, where an entity is registered as a foreign company. So, it is owned by a foreigner but is registered in India. In such kind of companies, we say these companies can be classified as foreign companies. It is owned by a foreigner but it is registered by the law of land or under the enactment statute which is established in a particular company. So, if we are talking about Indian Companies Act, it is registered under Indian Companies Act but is owned by a foreigner. Third is a producer company. Usually such kind of companies are associated with agricultural products, or the main purpose and object of such companies are agriculture and farming. So, these kind of companies basically are registered to deal up with the primary manufacturing or primary production in fact of something relating to farming or agriculture. Another kind of company is small company. The company where we say paid up capital is not exceeding for 50 lakh rupees and the turnover is not more than 2 crore rupees. To understand the next category, small company is one of those types of companies where we have paid up capital which is 50 lakh rupees. And the turnover of such companies are less or not exceeding than 2 crore rupees. We call them as a small company. Another kind of a company is subsidiary company. A company in which there are actually two companies. In fact, we can just discuss these two companies at one point of time. So subsidiary company and holding company, these are two companies which actually are engaged into the same purpose. But holding company is having holding over this subsidiary company, and this subsidiary company is subordinate to the holding company. So it basically is the one which maybe for a subsidiary purpose has its own establishment, and holding company is the one which is controlling company over this subsidiary company. So these are two companies which can be calculated as types of companies. Now there remains one more company to be discussed which I feel is important. Company registered under Section 8 of Companies Act. A very simple company to be understood. The company under Section 8 of Companies Act are known as Section 8 companies. What are these Section 8 companies? To come out of this suspense as to what are Section 8 companies, these are the companies which are usually registered for charitable purpose or companies which are non-profitable organizations. You have another statutes also. Charitable trusts, Trust Act, Indian Trust Act or Bombay Trust Act, if in case of state of Maharashtra. You have other statutes wherein you can register your organizations or your trusts. But sometimes these trusts or these organizations are registered as companies also, and wherever the intention or purpose of the company is wholly on charitable purposes or the object is completely non-profitable, then these companies or these associations can be registered as companies under Section 8 of Companies Act. So concluding or to conclude with what are types of companies, we can have these many types of companies. The first one is one-person company, to the most easier one to understand. So one-person company, public company, private company, company limited by shares, company limited by guarantee, unlimited company, royal chartered company, statutory company, foreign company, Section 8 company, producer company, small company, holding company and subsidiary company. So these are all types of companies under Companies Act, either directly mentioned under Companies Act or through interpretations of Companies Act. So this is all on types of companies from me. Thank you.